The World Cup nobody could have predicted. 14 days from now, the 2026 FIFA World Cup begins. 14 days. The opening ceremony is in Mexico City. The Estadio Azteca will be full. The trophy has been cleaned, the squads are named, the flights are booked. On the surface, everything is ready. And yet, on May 28, 2026, the tournament that was supposed to be the most straightforward World Cup in modern history is arriving as the most complicated one in a generation. Not in terms of the football. The football, when it starts, will be extraordinary. But in terms of what surrounds it, the questions that have followed it, the resistance that has built around it, the conversations happening right now inside football federations, fan groups, and the corridors of FIFA itself. This is unlike any World Cup that anyone currently alive has watched. The resistance is real. It's varied. It's coming from different directions, in different forms, for different reasons. And when you look at all of it together, calmly and honestly, it tells you something important about where football is and where it's going. So today, on May 28th, let's do that. Let's look at the full picture. What countries have pushed back against this tournament? What fans are saying and doing? What FIFA has had to navigate? And where everything stands with 14 days to go. Start with Iran, because Iran's story has no equivalent in the modern history of the World Cup. And it took a new turn just this week that nobody saw coming. Iran qualified for this tournament in March 2025, their 7th World Cup appearance, their 4th in a row. They earned their place. They played their matches. Mehdi Taremi scored the goals that sent them through. Everything was in order. Then, February 28th of this year arrived. Conflict began. Iran's supreme leader was killed. Within days, the sports minister went on state television and said something that shook the football world. He said, "Under no circumstances can we participate in the World Cup." Not a qualified statement, not a maybe. Under no circumstances. FIFA's response was immediate. Infantino said it clearly, repeatedly, in public. Iran will participate. He said it at the FIFA Congress in Vancouver in late April, where he opened his remarks by saying, "I am confirming, straight away, for those who want to say something else or write something else, that of course Iran will be participating." He said it like a man who had been fighting that battle for 2 months and was tired of having to fight it. What followed was extraordinary. Iran's Football Federation refused to fully back down. They released a 10-point ultimatum. They demanded guaranteed visas for every player and member of staff, specifically naming Mehdi Taremi and Captain Ehsan Haji Safi, whose mandatory military service histories complicated their applications under U.S. immigration classification. They demanded their anthem played correctly, their flag respected, their delegation protected at airports, hotels, and on the roads between venues. They asked FIFA to move their group stage matches from the United States to Mexico. FIFA said no to the match relocation. Their base camp in Tucson, Arizona, planned and approved months ago, was the subject of back-and-forth discussions for weeks. And then, just days ago, the story turned again. Iran relocated their base camp, not to Tucson, but to Mexico, specifically to Tijuana, directly across the border from San Diego. The U.S. government had refused to allow the Iranian squad to stay overnight on American territory. The solution, brokered between the Iranian Federation, FIFA, and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum's government, was this: Iran will base themselves in Mexico for the entire tournament. They will cross the border into the United States for their matches. They will play at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles on June 15th against New Zealand and June 21st against Belgium. Then they will travel north to Seattle for the Egypt fixture on June 26th. And after each match, they will return to Mexico. Think about what that means in practical terms. A World Cup team crossing an international border before and after every group stage match, flying from Tijuana to Seattle and back, managing jet lag, recovery, training schedules, and squad preparation across 2 countries,
simultaneously while navigating the most complicated diplomatic situation in the history of any nation attending this tournament. Iran's Federation president said the team may even be able to use Iran Air flights between cities, which would mean using their own national carrier to move between matches on American soil. Another logistical arrangement without precedent at a World Cup.
Infantino watched Iran beat Costa Rica 5-0 in a warm-up match in Antalya, Turkey, while he was there for bilateral meetings with the federation. He stayed to watch the game. That detail, the FIFA president sitting in the stands watching Iran's warm-up, tells you how seriously this relationship has been managed at the highest level. And as of today, May 28th, Iran's participation is confirmed. Their base is in Tijuana, their itinerary is set. They are going. Whether they should have to go through everything they've gone through to get there is a different question, but they're going. Now let's talk about Europe, because while Iran's story was unfolding, a different but related conversation was happening across the continent that football has called home for over a century. The Netherlands went first and went loudest. A petition with 174,000 signatures was formally presented to the Dutch parliament, asking the national team not to attend. 174,000 Dutch citizens putting their names to a document asking their football association to stay home. The KNVB's response was careful, almost painfully careful. Their president said the Netherlands would not boycott, adding the phrase, "so far." 2 words that did a great deal of work. Not "we are going," not "this is final," so far. Germany had the same conversation at institutional level. Oke Gottlich, one of 10 vice presidents of the DFB, went to the press with it. Not a fringe voice, not a protester outside a stadium, but a sitting official of one of the most powerful football associations in Europe. He told the Hamburger Morgenpost that the time had come to seriously consider a boycott. He invoked the 1980 Moscow Olympics. He asked whether the situations were comparable. He named FIFA's president. He asked what the threshold was. The DFB executive met, discussed it formally, and released a statement on January 31st. Germany would not boycott, but the fact that they had to say so in a public statement after an executive meeting tells you the conversation was not hypothetical. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter went public on January 27th and said, in his own words, "avoid the United States." He backed calls for a fan boycott. Mark Pieth, a Swiss anti-corruption lawyer who had worked on FIFA governance reform during Blatter's presidency, issued an interview to the Swiss daily Tagesanzeiger in which he said fans should stay away. He cited specific incidents. He named his reasons. He wasn't speaking in abstractions. Spain had the conversation too. Government officials raised it, the question was put publicly, the federation had to respond. France's sports minister said there was no desire for a boycott. Belgium's Royal Football Association said it was focused on sporting preparations while keeping an eye on developments. Denmark, whose territory of Greenland had been at the center of one of the year's most sensitive international discussions, found itself more personally entangled in the politics of this tournament than almost any other European nation. And through all of it, not a single major football federation formally withdrew. Not one. Every nation that qualified is going. The structural reality of football governance made it almost inevitable that this would be the outcome. FIFA's statutes are designed to prevent politically motivated withdrawal. Fines, suspensions, potential expulsion from future competitions. The consequences of withdrawal are severe enough that no federation, however uncomfortable, was going to pull the trigger. But that outcome, every team going, doesn't mean the conversation was insignificant. It means the opposite. Because when you look at what these conversations actually were, they were a reckoning. Not a boycott, not a protest, a reckoning with what it means to host the World Cup, what it requires of the host, what the governing body owes to the sport's values, and where the line is between football's role as a unifying force and its role as a vehicle for something else. The fans are the third strand of this story, and the fan picture is in some ways the most honest part of all. A Facebook group called Boycott FIFA World Cup in 2026 in USA has over 25,000 members.
Social media hashtags with the same sentiment have circulated across platforms for months. Former FIFA president Blatter explicitly endorsed a fan boycott. Swiss attorney Mark Peeth said his advice to fans was simply stay away from the USA. And the data suggests that advice has been listened to, not universally, not catastrophically, but measurably. Airline bookings from Europe to the United States for July 2026 are down 14% compared to the same period last year, in a year when the dollar is weaker against the euro, meaning the trip should be cheaper. Hotel bookings across American host cities are running significantly below expectations, according to the American Hotel and Lodging Association, whose survey found that nearly 62% of New York City hotel owners reported softer than expected World Cup business. Seattle had projected 17% higher international visitor numbers than it's currently tracking.
The secondary ticket market has responded accordingly. Average resale prices for group stage matches fell 23% between April 20th and May 20th. 87 of 91 American and Canadian fixtures have seen their entry price drop over the past month. The market set prices at a level that the actual fan base for this tournament, in actual conditions, wouldn't pay, and the market has been correcting itself, week by week, toward a level where something closer to the real demand meets the real supply. Football Supporters Europe called FIFA's pricing a monumental betrayal. Congressional representatives wrote to FIFA asking it to make travel to matches affordable. New York's mayor negotiated with Infantino personally and secured 1,000 tickets at $50 each for local residents, a gesture that mattered symbolically, even if 1,000 tickets in a city of 8 million is, in mathematical terms, a rounding error. And through all of this, FIFA has maintained its position. Infantino defended market rates. The organization pointed to its FIFA Pass system for visa prioritization, its supporter entry tier of cheaper tickets through national associations, its regular meetings with affected federations. The Secretary General flew to Istanbul to meet Iran's leadership. The organization moved slowly in some areas and quickly in others. Whether it moved in the right direction with enough urgency, using enough of its considerable leverage, that is the question that the historians of this tournament will be debating long after the confetti has fallen at MetLife Stadium. Here's something worth sitting with, though, because this story has another side that gets less attention than it deserves. The football is 14 days away, and it is, on pure footballing grounds, among the most compelling fields ever assembled. France, the world's #1 ranked nation, with Mbappé 4 goals from breaking Klose's all-time scoring record, and Deschamps in his farewell tournament. Argentina, the defending champions, with Messi at 38 years old, managing an injury concern that his federation has been quiet about this week. Brazil with Carlo Ancelotti and Vinicius and Neymar back at 34 for what may be one last attempt at the title his generation hasn't won. Spain, the European champions, young, fluid, difficult to play against and difficult to stop. England with a squad in genuine depth, carrying the weight of 60 years without a title onto the pitch in every match. Norway at their first World Cup in 28 years, with Erling Haaland having scored 16 goals in 8 qualifying matches and never yet played at a World Cup. Morocco back for the tournament where they made history 3 years ago, now with something to prove rather than something to discover. 48 teams, 104 matches, a 39-day tournament spread across 3 countries and 16 cities. Some of those cities, Mexico City, Guadalajara, Toronto, Vancouver, are preparing to deliver football atmospheres that will remind everyone who watches why this game is the one that crosses every border. The resistance to this tournament has been real. It has been documented, measured, sourced, and in some cases genuinely significant. Iran flying from a base in Mexico to play group stage matches in Los Angeles and Seattle is a story that has no parallel. The Dutch parliament debating whether its national team should attend a World Cup is something football historians will write about. The $150 train fare and the $6,900 supporter package and the $38,000 final ticket, those numbers will be studied in whatever review process FIFA conducts after this tournament concludes, and they will shape what comes next. But 14 days from now, something will happen that always happens when the World Cup gets this close. A referee in Mexico City will raise a whistle to his lips.
The Estadio Azteca, the ground where Pelé lifted the trophy in 1970 and Maradona scored the goal of the century in 1986, will fill with the sound of 87,000 people who have been waiting for this moment their whole lives, and the football will start. And football, when it starts, has a way of making everything else wait. I'd genuinely like to know how you're reading this tournament right now. Not the predictions, not the bracket, but the feeling. Do you come into 2026 with the same excitement you've carried to every World Cup before it? Or is there something different this time? A hesitation, a reservation, a sense that something has shifted? And do you think the football, when it starts, will override all of it? Leave your answer in the comments. These are the conversations worth having, and I read every one. If this kind of football journalism is worth your time, a like helps more than you might think. Subscribe if you want to follow this tournament all the way through, from Mexico City on June 11th to MetLife Stadium on July 19th. Every development, every match, every moment between now and the end. 14 days. The resistance has been heard. The football is coming. Football at this scale is never just a tournament. It's a moment in time.